In this lesson, we will explore how to solve multi-step equations with variables on both sides. The target for this lesson is that you will be able to solve equations in one variable that contain more than one operation. First, let's review the steps to solving a multi-step equation. We use the acronym SAM to help us remember the steps. In SAM, S stands for simplify. We just spent the last 2 weeks talking about how to simplify equations, and simplifying has two parts. First part is to distribute. If you see parentheses, and step 2 is to combine like terms. That's all part of the simplifying process. Step 2 is going to be to add or subtract, and that also has two parts to that step. So part A, we need to move the variable to one side of the equation, preferably the left, but technically it doesn't matter which side. Part B is to move the constant to the other side, preferably the right. And then finally, the final step, the same as it has been the entire time, either multiply or divide by the coefficient. Most of the time, you're going to see division, but technically it can be multiplication or division. Pause the video now if you need to write down the steps, because otherwise we're going to move on to 4 examples today. Example 1, solving with variables on both sides. So the 4 problems that we investigate today are just going to be basic examples, just showing us the process of how to solve when there's a variable on both sides. Let's take a look at problem number 1. Find the equal sign and draw the line straight down the middle to keep your sides separate. This is a problem that has variables on both sides. It has a 5n on the left side and it has a 9n on the right side. In order to solve, we need the variables to be on one side of the equation. So let's follow the steps from Sam. Step 1 said to simplify. We cannot distribute because there are no parentheses. We cannot combine like terms. When you're combining like terms, you need to look on just one side of the equation. So if I look at the left, 5n and 7 do not go together. And if I look at the right, 9n and 21 do not go together. So this equation is already simplified. So we move on to step 2. Step 2 is my adding and subtracting. So step 2a said to move the variable to one side, preferably the left side. So I see a 5n and a 9n. I need to move one of those. I'm going to move the 9n over so I can get rid of it on the right and put it on the left-hand side. This will help us later in the year. So the 9n's will cancel. 5n minus 9n is negative 4n. And then I drop down my constants. So I drop down the negative 7 equals, and I drop down the 21. Step 2b says to move the constant to the other side. So just like we've done all year, I box off the variable. Outside of the box is a negative 7. The opposite of that is to add 7, so I can move it to the other side. The 7's will cancel. I drop down the negative 4n equals 21 plus 7 gives me 28. Step 3 is to divide by the coefficient. The coefficient in this step is the negative 4, so I'm going to divide both sides by negative 4. These will cancel. And equals 28 divided by negative 4 gives me negative 7. So that's a pretty straightforward example of how to solve when you have variables on both sides. Let's try problem number 2. This is a you try problem, so the video will pause to ask you questions as we go along. So I will draw my line down the middle, and first I'm going to look to see, can I simplify? Is there anything I can simplify on the left-hand side? No, there's no parentheses, and these are not like terms. Is there anything I can simplify on the right-hand side? No, there are no parentheses, and these are not like terms. So now I need to move my variables by adding or subtracting. I see a 2x and I see a 7x. Technically, it doesn't matter which one you move, but I'm going to purposely put the variable on the left-hand side. I want to get rid of it from the right. I need to do the opposite of a positive 7. What's the opposite of positive 7? X. Minus 7x from both sides. 2x minus 7x gives me negative 5x. I drop down the constants, so I drop down the negative 6 equals, and I drop down the 4. From here, this is a two-step equation. So I box off the variable. Outside of the box, I see a negative 6. What's the opposite of a negative 6? Add positive 6. So I'm going to add 6 to both sides. My 6's cancel. I bring down the negative 5x equals 4 plus 6 makes 10. What's the final step? Just like every other problem, we need to divide by the coefficient. The coefficient is negative 5. So I'm left with x is equal to 10 divided by negative 5 makes negative 2. I'm going to clear my screen, and we're going to do 2 more problems together today. So just some additional practice, same steps. So problem 3, find the equal sign, draw the line down the middle. Let's look to see if I can simplify. I cannot simplify the left-hand side. There's no parentheses, and these are not like terms. I cannot simplify the right-hand side. There are no parentheses, and these are not like terms. So I just move straight on to step 2. I see variables on both sides. I see a 3n and a 5n. I need to move one of those. So the opposite of a positive 5n is to subtract 5n from both sides. This will move my variable to the left. 3n minus 5n makes negative 2n. I drop down the negative 6 equals, I drop down the positive 20. Now this is a two-step equation, so I box off the variable. Outside of the box is a negative 6. The opposite of that is a positive 6. My constants cancel. I bring down the negative 2n equals 20 plus 6 makes 26. Final step, I need to divide by the coefficient, so I will divide both sides by negative 2. And I'm left with n is equal to negative 13. One more problem today, and this problem is going to be a you try problem, so follow along with me. Problem number 4. Draw my line down the middle. Let's look to see if we can simplify. Can I simplify the left-hand side of this equation? No, there's no parentheses, and I cannot combine like terms. Can I simplify the right side of this equation? No, there's no parentheses, and I still cannot combine like terms. So now let's move our variable over to the left-hand side. I need to get rid of a positive 8n. How do I undo a positive 8n? Subtract it, so minus 8n on both sides of the equation. 4n minus 8n leaves me with negative 4n. I drop down the positive 16 equals, I drop down the negative 8. Make sure you drop the negative along with that 8. From here, let's box off the variable. Outside of the box is a positive 16. How do I undo a positive 16? Minus it, so subtract 16 from both sides. I bring down that negative 4n equals, on the right-hand side, I have negative 8 minus 16. If you're using a calculator, just type that straight in. But if you're using your integer rules from middle school, I have same signs, so I add. 16 plus 8 makes 24. Keep the sign of the bigger number. 16 is bigger and it was negative, so I bring the negative along with it. What's the final step? Divide both sides by -4. I'm left with n is equal to negative divided by a negative makes a positive. 24 divided by 4 gives me 6. So these are all examples of how you solve with variables on both sides of the equation.